Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. Iran's internal unrest and the looming threat of U.S. military intervention are adding to more uncertainty across the Middle East and global markets. Now, authorities across Iran have arrested tens of thousands, with protesters facing so-called terrorism charges. Now, the official death toll stands at 3,117, while NGOs estimate that number to be even higher, between 5,000 and 20,000. Now, to discuss the latest developments and what could unfold next, we're joined by Naghmeh Rajabi, president of the Anglo-Iranian Professionals Association. Good to have you on TVP World.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me.
So we have the latest reports with all of that's happened in those last few weeks. It's a volatile situation. With these latest numbers that are coming to us as well, looking particularly at the Kurdish region, I'm curious about your views, because we're hearing now that there's been actually suggested reports of military-grade weapons also being used in Tehran. Where are we with all this right now? Where does this go next?
Sure. So today actually obviously marks the 29th day of the uprisings, which started on the 28th of December. Since then, as of 11th of January, to echo what you said, we're getting reports from the MEK networks and the Iranian resistance networks inside of Iran is at least 3,000 deaths. And that number has obviously significantly increased because it doesn't take into account the number of injuries. There's a lot of injured people. There's a lot of people unaccounted for, and the Iranian resistance and their network are working tirelessly to try to identify these individuals. As you said, the Iranian regime has been cracking down on these protests in a very, very brutal manner, more than we've seen in the recent years. It's quite, I would say, is probably the biggest massacre in the Iranian history after the 1988 massacre of 30,000 political prisoners. We're kind of seeing the same sort of scale of brutality. And what also sets it different this time is the fact that it's 2 points. So one, that the protesters are very organized this time. So we are seeing an organized resistance, is a nationwide resistance across different cities. So the Iranian regime themselves have admitted to 400 counties being impacted by these uprisings, and over 100 areas simultaneously in Tehran alone. So there is the organized nature of the protests, and is also the fact that the protesters are fighting back. So, they're no longer, just coming to the streets. They are facing is a battle between them and the IRGC forces that are suppressing them. So I think it's important to distinguish the difference of this sort of uprising compared to the ones before. And obviously, every time the Iranian regime feels weak, that's when they bring out their suppressive forces. Like you said, they are using live ammunition. We're now, after many, many days of internet blackout, we're slowly starting to see some of the reports and videos coming from the streets of Iran, where we're saying IRGC forces actually in an executionary style they're killing people on the streets. They're taking military sort of vehicles onto the streets and just shooting randomly at the protesters. What we're also seeing is a vast number of underage individuals, so children and teenagers, because these protests have been led by the rebellious youth and the resistance units that are part of the Iranian resistance. They're the organized resistance units inside of Iran. So, the Iranian regime is cracking down, and although, despite of the fact that so many people have been killed so far, this is literally a fire under the ashes, and it can ignite any moment. There is no way that the Iranian regime can go back to the point at which it was on the 28th of December.
Yeah, but at the same time,
not at the scale that it has killed.
if I may, because you mentioned, the brutal crackdown. We've seen some of those images as well. The deaths, that number, if it's 3,000 or even more, it's terrible. And you said the way that it's being handled is also harsh, more intense. We've spoken to experts as well since 2019, 2022. Those are different. But at the same time, you said there's no way back. I'm curious about the kind of messaging as well that has gone through to the Iranian population and on the street. You mentioned very young people. Words from the U.S. president. I remember on his Truth Social saying very much he's with the protesters. Also from one of the opposition leaders, if we can call Reza Pahlavi, also in the United States, saying to take over your institutions. I know he's divisive. Not everyone wants him back. However, I'm just curious, those kind of words and statements, now the U.S. president saying there's a U.S. armada on the way to the region, how is that received on the ground, and how could also the regime in Iran react to all this?
Sure. So I think it is important to highlight this. So the Iranian resistance that have been fighting the two dictatorships of Shah and Sheikh for over 60 years are the ones that are on the ground. They have grassroots support on the ground. And Mrs. Maryam Rajabi, who is the president-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, she has said many, many years, not yesterday, not a year before, she's been saying it for years. We don't want the Western governance to be appeasing the Iranian regime, and we don't want any war. So we've seen foreign intervention. We know the result of it in the Middle East. We've seen the 12-day war that we witnessed as well. It does not topple the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime and true regime change and democracy can only be achieved by the Iranian people inside of Iran. So that's the first thing. Obviously, we encourage any sort of messages of solidarity with the Iranian people, but words are not enough. What we're asking for is not foreign intervention, but what we're asking for is prescribing the IRGC, which is killing the youth on the streets, and it's the sort of monetized arm of the Iranian regime outside of Iran as well. They're exporting terrorism across the region. We want the Iranian embassies, which are centers of terror in European countries, to be shut down. Their diplomats to be expelled out of the soil of these democratic countries, and some accountability, over these people that are killing, and their children and very close family ties are living freely in democratic countries. They all need to be expelled. And also, the biggest thing is we need to be recognizing the Iranian people's just fight for freedom. We need to be recognizing their legitimate reason for fighting and being armed and fighting against a regime that is obviously killing them with military devices, and they don't have anything. So we need to recognize that, so that they can come back out with the understanding that the world is behind them and they're not by themselves. So we don't believe in military intervention. And despite what I think is also important for your viewers to understand, that the Iranian resistance and the Iranian people are not asking for the son of the deposed Shah back. He's not just divisive. Reza Pahlavi is actually a propaganda campaign which is only serving the Iranian regime and is buying more time for them to kill people. Where is Reza Pahlavi now? He's suddenly gone quiet again. This is what he does. He has zero experience leading anything. His dad was a dictator that the Iranian people toppled in 1979. And every once in a while, when something happens in Iran, he comes and he proclaims himself as the leader, as this father figure, as he claims himself. The Iranian people are not calling for his return. We've seen videos being dubbed. So it is a conspiracy that is coming outside of Iran, and it's sort of, he's obviously enjoying it because he's loving the attention, but the Iranian people are here paying the price. Now the Iranian regime is using these type of, narratives to say that these protesters were backed by Israel, were backed by America, and they want, they're backed by this puppet of the West. That's not what the Iranian people are risking their lives coming to the streets to die for. They don't want to replace one dictator with another dictator. And one of their main chants on the streets of Iran is down with the oppressor, whether it be the Shah or the supreme leader. So they've been very clear about this. And I think giving any platform, speaking about Reza Pahlavi, who again, I say, he's absolutely unqualified to even run a superstore, really, let alone a country as complex as Iran, is just taking away the platform and the voice of the Iranian people who just want true democracy and change.
Understood. I'm also just curious because there's so many facets to this. I mean, I heard what you said in terms of you don't want any type of intervention, be that from the United States or any other Western power. The Iranians, what you've said, would like to take their own country back. But at the same time, we're looking at the rial, the currency, a terrible collapsed state. We're looking at inflation, well over 40%, water shortages, infrastructure shortages. Now this unrest, which I haven't seen before in a very, like this ever really in Iran. But I'm just curious also, if it comes to what could be next, it becomes also, I think, a challenge to see that with the leadership. You mentioned there's a particular individual many people don't want, but then in leadership within Iran, who takes up that mantle? Who is that person, or who are those people who lead it? And what happens if the United States does negotiate with Iran? I mean, there's under immense pressure to negotiate for sanctions relief. What happens if that is also in play here? So leadership, and also if the United States and other countries decide to engage once again with the regime.
Sure. So I'll answer your second question first about if they decide to negotiate with the regime. Look, this is basically a continuation of the appeasement policy, and it's giving a clear signal to killers like the Iranian regime and other dictators across the world, that actually it's okay to kill your people in the masses and sort of ascertain your position, and the West will just turn a blind eye and still negotiate with you. So, and what has that got? This is where the point we're at the moment, the fact that the Iranian regime is this emboldened to carry out a massacre in the sight of the whole entire world, is, basically saying they don't care, right? So this is the direct result of years and years of appeasement, which the Iranian resistance have been speaking with MPs, has been speaking with different governments, saying, please just stop this. You're basically giving more credibility. You need to take a firm stance against a bully, a dictator like that. So that's the first thing. It would be a huge, huge mistake, not just for the people of Iran. As we know, the Iranian regime is not just endangering the people of Iran. They're exporting terrorism across the region. There's been multiple accounts just in the UK alone of real threats, real terrorist threats that we've been made aware of as Iranian dissidents. So, this is not just going to be limited to the Iranian people. It is going to be taking over across the world. So that's the first thing. It would be a huge mistake. Second thing you said about the leadership, as I said, there is a Iranian resistance led by Mrs. Naghmeh Rajabi. They have been tirelessly working and fighting against two dictatorships of Shah and Sheikh. They're not just inside of Iran. They have a coalition outside of Iran, so the National Council of Resistance of Iran, which has a clear transition plan. They're not there to take power for themselves. There is not going to be one individual, whereas with Reza Pahlavi, I don't know if you've studied the transition plan that they've given out. He's apparently going to be taking over the power of all the different sort of government bodies and will be in power for about 4 years, they're talking about, until an election is sort of offered to the people. That's not what the Iranian people want. The transition that Mrs. Naghmeh Rajabi, through her 10-point plan, is offering is within 6 months. They will be sort of setting up the infrastructure and the governance bodies.
So on all that, I mean, there are different layers to this. Sorry to jump in there. I mean, there's such a wide topic. Well, unfortunately, we'll have to conclude there. Look, thanks so much for giving us the latest and all those insights on this developing story. That was Naghmeh Rajabi. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.